Dorothy Visser is a residential school survivor. Almost 83 years old now, Dorothy remembers life before residential school and shares what she experienced in the residential school system, both good and bad. Dorothy's focus is on healing her communities through language, culture, and faith.
My name is Dorothy Visser. Dorothy Visser Nitsikasun. Niskapuni Kutini Treaty 6 territory. Magamego te wikiana ya chiki kichigami Squamish Musqueam Megwa. Swelly Tooth Wikichigote. I am acknowledging that I live in the territory of our West Coast friends and neighbors, Musqueam, Squamish, and Swelly Tooth. And this is where I live at present time. I am from the Treaty 6 territory of Alberta, Salt Lake Cree Nation. I am a residential school survivor, almost 83 years old of age now. So I have lived at the time when we had a good life before residential school. My family were very hard workers, and we were taught life skills at a very young age. For instance, my mother used to take us into the woods to show us how to snare rabbits and grouse. And I spent a lot of time with my grandmother, who was a medicine lady. She delivered many children, home births. She was a midwife and also healed a lot of people with her medicines. They traveled a lot during the summertime by horse and wagon to search for medicines and also to visit family in Saskatchewan as well as Montana. And they always had children. They always had children that accompanied them. Tried to show me a lot about the medicines, but I was too young to understand what she was talking about at the time, which was really, really unfortunate for me, because I would have learned now that I am older. It would have been so beneficial to learn about the medicines that healed the people. And they had a big farm, and my grandmother gave me a section of her garden to grow my own vegetables for my family. And so I also learned to do a lot of the farm work as a little child. I went to school when I was 5 years old, but I cried so much that I had to be returned home and went back to residential school at the age of 6. It is very heart-wrenching to have a child taken away from home and to be taken to a strange place. That caused a lot of harm to the children, being taken away from the families, from loving homes. At that time, people lived by natural law. And as the children were being taken away to residential schools, some of the parents started to drink. There was never any alcohol with the Cree, with the nations before the settlers came to this land. And I believe it was the traders that brought what they call the moonshine, showed the native people how to make moonshine. So as the children were being taken away from school, some of the parents started to drink. And that's how alcoholism came to be on the First Nations reservations. There was a lot of restrictions with the people. At the time, they had an Indian agent to look after the affairs of the First Peoples on the reservations. I'm just speaking from the heart right now. I didn't prepare anything, so I'm just saying what comes to mind of what I recall. It was really a difficult time in the residential schools, and I never spoke a word of English before I went to school. It was all Cree. And I never forgot my language, and today I'm teaching in different locations to bring back part of our culture by teaching the language. And my son and I also visit preschools to teach them dance and to share our culture with them, the history, with the children, so they can be proud of who they are. I always believe that children learn at a very young age, and they never forget. And remembering what I was taught and how I was taught as a child, I never forgot. And this is what helped me to to survive after leaving the school and being on my own. I left home at the age of 16 because I hated to see what had become of some of our people, the alcohol, the drinking. I it didn't sit well with me, so I left home to go to the city to find work and to further my education. And I'm a widow. I've had 7 children, and 4 are still alive. I have 3 here in Vancouver, living in this area. And I'm a great grandmother, and I had a wonderful husband. He was a Dutchman, but he was a very good provider and very good man. So I've had a very good life. I want to share a little bit about what happened in the residential schools. The children all wore the same type of clothing, and the food was not very good. There was a lot of punishment mostly by the nuns in those days. If a nun didn't like you, you got the worst of the punishment. And if you were favored, then you were treated. A lot of the children who ran away from school were severely punished by a thick strap. It was about 1 inch wide, but quite thick. And they would lay them down on the bed and strap them, and then they would punish them further by shaving their heads and making them stand in front of all the other children. That was, I believe, the worst punishment that I saw. I almost got the strap once where I got blamed for something I didn't do, and I was about to get the strap, but fortunately, my dad had come to visit me in the hospital. So I told my dad I was so happy to see him, and I told him why. So he must have spoken to the priest or to the nuns, because I never did get a strap in after that. And but I did have a lot of knuckle slaps with the ruler. I was supposed to wear glasses as a child, and when I didn't wear my glasses, I would get sent to bed, and they had a movie. So that was my punishment for not wearing my glasses. And another time I had a sliver in my thumb, and it grew over 1 inch around with pus because it was infected. And I didn't get sent to the hospital until I asked when I saw some children were going. And as a result of that, the nun made fun of me because I wanted to go to the hospital, but she sent me anyway. And so they did surgery and removed my nail as well. So, and it was fortunate that I did go in the hospital, because if it had got more infected, I think it would have been very severe. But those were some of the punishments that we had, And of course, as a child, my grandparents were very cultural. My great-grandfather chose to live on the reserve. He had a Métis wife, and they chose to live on the reserve because they wanted to follow the First Nations culture. And my great-grandmother was from the Desjardins clan, and it dates back to 1600. I have all the records of my genealogy. I've always been interested in where I came from and about history. One of my late aunties used to tell me the stories of my family history. My great-great-grandfather, Frederick Hog Desjardins, was a great buffalo hunter. He worked with the Hudson Bay Company, traveling with the traders, and also he was a great buffalo hunter, and he had ridden one buffalo to kill another buffalo. I have the stories of that in my history book. And my great grandfather, with him as Cardinal, Alexander, with him as Cardinal, chose to live on a reserve with his wife, and he wouldn't allow any of his daughters or granddaughters to marry into the white society because he felt they would be looked down upon and wouldn't be treated very well. And so, but the government has a lot to do with all these residential schools and the Métis as well. You know, they've had a rough time, a rough go of it as well. We know the history of Louis Riel. And also, a lot of the Métis people were ashamed of who they were, of their Indigenous heritage, and tried not to tell people that they were part Native. And but that is the truth. we had Métis relatives who used to come and visit with my grandparents, and they spoke mostly Cree with some French, and that's called Michif. So, and they spoke with a French accent. I remember that. And so life on the reserve was very good in those days. The people were very community oriented. They followed their cultural ceremonies and practices, and also my grandparents went to church every Sunday, even though they did practice their cultural ceremonies as well. My grandmother always had a sweat lodge in her yard, and quite often she would take me into the sweat lodge for a good sweat. You know, it's very healthy. It's very healthy. Sweat lodges are very healthy for your body and very healing. I recall that as well. So I never lost my faith the way I was taught by going to church, but also I followed my cultural teachings. So I have both. And a lot of our people, because of the residential school, have reverted to the original way of life by doing the ceremonies, sweat lodge ceremonies, pipe ceremonies, sun dances. I recall as a child, my great-grandfather was also a powwow dancer, traditional dancer, ceremonial dancer. And I witnessed my great-grandfather and the grandfathers dancing when I was a wee child. And I thought that was so beautiful. I never forgot how beautiful that was to me. And I recall also seeing the Kokum's grandmother's sun dancing. And the arbor was made out of trees, and the fences inside the arbor were made out of willows. And the ladies would sit behind those little fences for the four-day period. They would occasionally get up to dance. And I remember how they would pop up and down when they would dance. And they all had round red rosy cheeks that they use with the medicine that they use. And I just remember that so vividly, and I thought it was so beautiful. And also they had ceremonies to honor their people who had passed on, you know. And also they had, they still have the round dances today in the fall in the communities. That is what I remember of my great-grandparents. I just want to share a little bit about my great-grandfather. I just loved my great-grandfather with him as a Jean Cardinal. I was just running, before I went to residential school, I was running down the road one day, and my great-grandfather was coming down a hill, and I met him, and I looked up at him, and I thought to myself, oh my God, it's so old. That almost frightened me because he'd gotten so old. He was bent over, and his hair was pure white, and he looked at me, and he started to laugh, and he said, as if he was reading my mind, he said, you know, little grandchild, in Cree. This is what he said in Cree. You know, little grandchild, he said, it seems that you start life as a little child, and before you know it, you're a little child all over again. You know, I looked at him and I started to laugh. And I thought to myself, I used to still see old grandpa. So we shared a good little chuckle together, you know. And then I just ran on to meet my cousins. But I never forgot that, you know, the wisdom in seeing me, and he just, it seemed as if he knew what I was thinking, you know. Yeah. But anyway, I just love this old grandfather, you know, and they used to, my auntie, back in the day, they looked after the Muslims and Kokums, the grandmothers and grandfathers, you know, and we as children were taught also how to look after them, you know, and just little ways. We were taught how to look after our grandparents and great grandparents, and especially if they were very old. And the utmost thing that we learned was respect. We needed to respect our elders, and we needed to respect our siblings. When we were children, you know, a lot of the people had just one-room houses, and some of the children had to sleep on the floor. You know, so if our brothers were sleeping on the floor, we were taught never to walk over them. We had to walk around them, you know, and out of respect. And the young people, the young couples, never said any off-color jokes or talked about anything about of sexual content in front of the elders, out of respect for them, you know. So that was really what was taught, you know, respecting each other as a people, with your neighbors and you know, families, and that's what I recall, you know, the respect. And the life was just so beautiful. The community was just so beautiful. Everybody was good to everybody. If a person entered your home, they were fed. Even if all you had was bannock and tea, they were fed. And when you had people come to visit from another territory, they always gave them the best of what they had. You know, gift giving was a thing that they honored, to give the best of what you had to your people, to your visitors. And so that was what I recall, you know, in prayer, so important. You know, the world is in such a shambles today, and I believe a lot of people don't pray anymore, you know. They forget that we have a God that is present with us every day. Mama Tawima, we call him in the Cree Nation, our Father. This is how they they call him Creator. And this is how they pray in the sweat lodges, Mama Utawino, our Father. And they refer to the Creator, our Father. And for me, I believe in Jesus because that's how I was taught. I never forget that, you know, because I know that, you know, the Great Spirit, the Holy Spirit is with us every day of our lives. You know, when we come to recognize that, we can overcome anything that comes our way into our lives. You know, we've had a lot of tragic events that have happened in our family. There have been deaths, very, very sadful situations, you know, like suicides. And my own mother died froze to death while she had been inebriated. You know, my father suffered a lot from this, and he started drinking and every day because he was so traumatized by my mother's death. And my late sister heard about this, so she drove to the reserve and went to my dad's house and packed all his clothing. And she drove around till she found him and put him in her car and took him home with her. And she looked after him for 3 years. And after the 3rd year, she called me and asked me if I would take over looking after our dad. And I said, yes, I would absolutely love to do so. So I drove from Vancouver to Edmonton to pick up my dad, and I brought him home with me. And occasionally I would just give him a little glass of wine before he went to bed. And by the time that he was ready to go home, he wanted to go home because he missed the language. He said, my friends are all dying off. And I said, I miss speaking the language. He says, and I would like to go home now, you know. And he said, besides, there's nothing but trees and water over here in Vancouver, right? So anyway, I took him back home, and by this time he was completely sober. I took him to visit a lady here that spoke Cree, but I didn't know. I had no idea. I knew that she spoke Cree, so I asked if I could bring my dad to visit with her because she spoke the language, and she was an elderly lady. But when we got to her home, she was drinking beer with another person, you know. And she offered my dad a beer, and my dad said, thank you, but he said, I declined because it will only hurt me, you know. I will not be feeling well if I do. And I was so proud of my dad. You know, that he rejected that bottle of beer, you know. So though this is one of the things that is hurting our people, you know, the drugs and the alcohol, not only our people, but, you know, people in general, it is such a terrible thing, you know. And you know, we just hope and pray that, you know, people can heal from this, you know, the drugs and alcohol on the reserves. There are people who are, you know, doing the right thing by trying to help them with the counseling and the just helping them. You know, I didn't want to have anything to do with alcohol when I left home because of what I saw, you know. So I can have a glass of wine for dinner and stuff like that, you know, but I did not want to have anything to do with alcohol when I first left home because I saw what it was doing to our people. So that's one of the things that I wanted to share, you know, to encourage the children to veer away from alcohol and drugs and the smoking. I started smoking as a 14-year-old because I saw everybody doing it, you know. And I had TB at the time. I was in the hospital with TB, and I started smoking, you know. Of course, we didn't let the nurses know what we were doing. We were sneaking these smokes, you know. And my dad restricted me from smoking when I went home from the hospital. But I smoked till I was in 1977. Our son was born, and my husband was a 4-pack a day smoker, and I was 1-pack a day smoking. And my husband was sitting there with his head down, and he said, I have to do it. I have to do it for my son. I said, do what, Bill? He said, I have to quit smoking. I need to do it for our son. I said, are you serious? He said, yes, I'm serious. You know, I said, well, Bill, if you can do it, I said, I'll wait 1 week If you can do it, I said, I'll put my cigarettes down too. So that's what happened. It was really difficult. It was very, very difficult. But you know what? It works. We have the willpower. For anybody who's a smoker or a drinker, you do have the willpower to stop. And you just have to make up your mind to do it. And nowadays, I can't stand cigarette smoke. I can't stand being around cigarette smoke, or marijuana for that matter, although it is medicinal. For some people, it is medicinal and it is a good thing. The medicine is good. He said it's only the abuse that goes with it that makes it bad, but all medicine is good if you use it in the way that it was meant to be, and that's another thing too. I almost threw away my sweetgrass, and I was so ashamed of myself, and it took me a long time before I could use it again. But I went to I went to my bedroom. I opened the Bible, and the answer was right there in front of me. And Timothy, it says, everything that God created is good, and everything is to be received with a prayer of thanks, because God's word and the prayer makes it acceptable to God. That was one of the things that from the teachings we got from the churches. We thought that being native and following the culture was bad because they viewed us as being savages that were what do you call, without any religious knowledge, or pagans. They were branded as pagans, when all the time they lived a better Christian life than a lot of Christians do in the way they lived their lifestyle. It was beautiful. It was beautiful. The teachings that are coming back, the medicine wheel teachings, are there to help you live a well-balanced lifestyle, So anyway, that's what I wanted to share, to encourage people to follow who they are, to be proud of who they are. Our First Nations people, they are a good people. We are the first peoples of this land. A lot of Europeans, settlers, don't know our history, and they need to know who we are. They need to know who we are. We are the first peoples of the land, and we are a good people. So I just wanted to share all those truths about our people, the way I've seen our people raised their families. All the teachings that come, the TP teachings, everything that's connected to our teachings are good teachings. So I think a lot of people could benefit from those teachings, especially about respect. And we have the four nations, the four colors. Everybody is a human being. We're no different than anybody else. We're all human beings. And my late husband, who was Dutch, always said, the blood that runs through our veins is all the same color. So we need to be respectful of one another. And if only the whole world would see that, we would all have better lives.
Thank you so much, Dorothy. Your story is inspiring. Coming out, finding strength even through the massive tragedy and devastation which was the residential schools.